You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short. And today I'm here with one of my favorite people in the whole world, Sherianna Boyle. Sherianna is the author of 9 books, including her most recent, Emotional Detox Now, 135 Practices to Renew the Mind, Heart, and Body, releasing in February 2022. So you'll be able to pre-order it when this comes out. She is an adjunct psychology professor, founder of Emotional Detox Coaching and the Cleanse Method. She has been featured in over 85 articles and a highly sought after featured presenter for renowned organizations and one of our writers. So I'm super excited to have you here today, Sherianna. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I think that the topic that you chose to do your series on was like so relevant, and not relevant just today or tomorrow, but from the past too. So I love that we're talking about eating, emotional eating, because we were talking earlier today about how we're conditioned to do this for everything. We eat when we're happy, we eat when we're sad, and pretty soon it's not nutrients, it's feeding whatever emotion we're going through. So, I mean, they even call food comfort food, right?
Right.
This is the
Absolutely.
food you eat to comfort you. So I love that you're here today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think you bring up a good point, Jana, in that we all do this. And that's the first thing I wanted to start with and just kind of disarm everybody, and that we all turn to food now and then as a source of comfort. That is very common, that is very normal, and can be very truly comforting, especially during times where we're feeling hurt or sad or down. And you're right, a lot of it is conditioned by society and rewarded by society. But I don't want people to think that if you turn to food because of your emotions, that's always a bad thing, because that's not what we're going to be focusing on in this series. We're not focusing on it in terms of if somebody's grieving and you deliver them food, or if there's a wedding and you create some beautiful dessert to contribute. That's not what this series is about.
So this won't be going out until January, but we're literally just a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving. And it's another point of what eating is all about, right? We're surrounded by family and loved ones. So it's not always a negative thing. Sometimes it's a celebration and joyful. So I love that you're going to break this down into 4 parts. And the very first part we're going to talk about is what is emotional eating. So do you want to address that?
Sure. So emotional eating is when you turn to food as a way to manage your stress or manage what's referred to as a negative emotion. So we don't really manage the emotions that are quote unquote higher level emotions, meaning like joy and happiness. Well, sometimes we might actually, but it's more about managing the emotions such as loneliness or boredom or shame, unworthiness, and guilt is another big one, Jana. But it's known for a way that we turn to food to manage stress. And what happens is it becomes a habit. So again, initially it might not start out that way, right? It might be to help you get through something, because we all go through that something, a breakup. And you see the classic movie with, the girl grabbing the gallon of ice cream and sitting on the couch for 3 days and binge. It's when it continues on and it becomes a habit. And then, as you know, habits turn into patterns. And in the emotional detox language, we call those patterns of reactivity. So now you're not really feeling anymore, even though it's called emotional eating. It almost becomes like a numbing, Jana, a way to stop yourself from feeling, because let's face it, some of those experiences in life can be painful. And I believe sometimes we just don't feel like we have enough in us to get through it. And we turn to these outside things because there might be a part of us that doesn't really believe we have enough strength or support or energy to face it. And so there's it's really so many different reasons. And I know we're going to talk about the causes in the next segment, but in terms of the emotional eating and what it is, it's not hunger. So just know that you're not going to food because you're hungry. You're going to food to manage something that you feel. And you're very often selecting the food based on what you feel. And so it becomes this tricky because a lot of times with emotional eating, Jana, we turn to foods that are sugary or salty, or they have a lot of carbohydrates in them. And those foods can be very addictive, right? So we know that sugar can be a substance that we can literally get addicted to. And now all of a sudden, now we're in this cycle. And it's like, well, what came first? Was it my emotion? Am I just like can't stop eating these things? Like, what's going on? And that's when it takes over. And it's like anything, and emotional eating, when it becomes that habit, it almost it can get into that addictive kind of category. And so it's not a disorder at that point. Disorders are different. They can, that's an eating disorder, can be life threatening. It can threaten your health, but it can become perpetual, and you get in this cycle, and it's hard to see your way out sometimes without support.
So I have a question for you about, you said that emotional eating, you're not eating for hunger, you're eating to feel that emotion or put a blanket around it or whatever cozy little thing you want to say about your eating, your emotions. But how do you know the difference? Like there's been times I've eaten, I thought I was hungry, but I really wasn't. It was really an emotional thing. So how do people recognize and separate the two? Like my body needs energy right now. My body needs this. And how do we start making that distinguish between the two so that we know when to say, oh, no, maybe not right now?
Well, with emotional eating, something to pay attention to is it tends to be quick. So if it's impulsive, if it's quick, you're just grabbing it, that's often emotional eating. So we see that a lot in society. We're trained, like you said, to do these quick fixes. But very often, anything that comes quick or impulsive is related to a trigger. And a lot of emotional eating is trigger driven. So if it feels quick and impulsive, that's when you say to yourself, wait a minute, am I really hungry here? Or am I having a trigger? Am I experiencing a trigger, meaning there's an emotion in me looking to come up to be processed and to be experienced. And I always say to be seen, heard, and validated. So pay attention to the quick, impulsive urge, like pop it in your mouth quick and run out the door kind of stuff. That could be managing stress in your life, or managing feeling overwhelmed, or feeling underappreciated, or just something in your mind that is going on. A lot of people are walking around and they have many, many things on their mind, and they're just trying their best to just stay focused on one thing. And meanwhile, maybe they have someone who they're worried about, or a situation they're concerned about. They're managing all of those distractions through food. So distractibility is another hint. If you feel really distracted when you're eating, it could be due to emotional eating. Also, pay attention to the foods you choose. So emotional eaters tend to go to the same foods over and over. So notice that. Am I eating a lot of the same thing? Because that's not the same as, well, this is what my body needs, right? My body needs hydration. My body needs some nutrients, but yet I seem to always go for this, which I have plenty of that, but not much of this. And that could be another cue that there's something there emotionally that's looking to be processed.
I think that it is funny that you mentioned earlier too, that emotional eating, you see it everywhere. Like there isn't a chick flick movie that I've watched where when they have a fight with their boyfriend, you see them come in with the tub of ice cream and they've got the spoon digging in and they're having this really in-depth conversation. So in our heads, We feel like if we break up with our boyfriend or we have a love issue, we are going to get our friend and get the ice cream because that creates great conversation and solutions, which is really not the case. So I mean, I love that it has been really stereotyped, but I have noticed I never see a movie with guys doing that.
True.
Is it
Maybe,
different for men? Like, do they
well,
eat?
maybe a beer. I don't know.
They
With
do.
their
They go to
steak.
alcohol, but
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
never see a guy grabbing like a cheeseburger, whatever their comfort
Or
food is.
they
I notice it mostly with women.
definitely, I noticed that too. Definitely. And if you do, they probably hide it.
Possibly. That's true. They probably do.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that we can do as we're on this journey on recognizing emotional eating? Because I really want people, when you do this 4-part series, I want them to hear like, what is emotionally? Am I eating emotionally? What is that? So how can we better connect ourselves to what it is, what we're looking for so that we can move to the next space and start being aware of it?
So again, I'm going to point back to triggers. And so what we're asking is, well, how do I know when I'm being triggered? And again, a trigger is often a sign that there is an emotion coming up to be processed, but can't because we get distracted. And one of the ways that we distract ourselves is by turning to food or thinking about food, or all of a sudden rearranging our day around food or preoccupying ourselves with food. So you want to pay attention to triggers. Well, how do I know if I'm in a trigger? Very often there's tension involved, right? So if you feel tight, if you feel tense, if you feel sort of an urge feeling, again, it's that quick impulsive thing where I want to say, it's like when you push send on an email and you were like, crap, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have taken a few breaths before I pushed the send button or a text message. It's the same thing with food. So you have to notice, how does my body feel? And if it feels really tight or tense, or if you're feeling rushed or impulsive or even dull sometimes, and then it could be a trigger. The other thing is to notice your breathing. So if you're holding your breath a lot, if you're not breathing much at all, it's very shallow, you haven't really taken breaths, a few deep breaths in a while, maybe you've been going on for even days, right? Sometimes weeks without a few deep breaths, then it's like it could be coming from a triggered response. If you're not getting that oxygen and you're not circulating your blood and oxygen through your body, because that means you're also not circulating your emotions. They're just kind of there and you're finding other ways to manage them. So look at the breath, look at the levels of tension, and look at the levels of distractibility.
So becoming more aware of why we're eating is a huge factor in recognizing what's going on. And for those people who are like listening to this show and wondering, like, can I create new habits or am I stuck with this? Because some of us have been conditioned for this since we were little, since we were babies, like cry, they give you a bottle. Like you're constantly being fed to self-soothe. So can we find other self-soothing things to help change the way that looks once we become aware and we recognize why I'm eating? Is there a way to start reconditioning our mind and our body?
Yes. Well, what I always teach is stop making it about the food, right? Just it's really not about the food. The food is a symptom. It's not the source. It's not the root cause of it. And so kind of give yourself a break on that. And that's why I say focus on what is happening in your body. Am I in a trigger? And it's your body talking to you, right? So it's not about the food. Take the emphasis off. And we also live in this world of dieting, right? Everything is about restricting, calorie counting, watching, so many things to pay attention to, calories and gluten, this and that. And you can really get lost in all of that. And some people just say, oh, I just to shut out the noise of it all, they turn to food to sort of block it. So let go of making it about the food and instead start to treat your body as a voice. It's trying to communicate with you. So if there's tension, it might not be that it's hungry. It just might need that you to spend time for a moment to create some space for a little bit of feeling to occur. So there's many, many mindful ways. I know we're going to talk about that in the series. Did you want me to bring in some now?
Absolutely. We can do a couple
Sure.
now, but I also want to talk about when we're done talking about a couple of the ways, I definitely want to talk about, because you're like one of my mentors. I absolutely love you. I'm obsessed with following you, but you're like the emotional and detox period guru. Like everything you're writing about is how to get rid of the negative and how to fill that space with something positive, light and bright, and how to recognize it. So you're really changing like the world. But I would love to know a couple of ways that I can recondition myself to be more aware of when that's happening.
Sure. And do you have an example, Jana, that you wanted to share? Are you
Sure.
recognizing a time right now?
I do.
Okay,
So here's
good.
my
So
biggest thing. Like I eat all plant-based. Having said that, I know there's very little in my pantry that's plant-based. It's always fresh or refrigerated, right? And so when between calls, because I don't get to have regular meal times because I'm so booked during the day, I run into my pantry and I just stand in there. Like I have a big, gigantic walk-in one. I just stand there looking around. Like, and then of course, the only thing I know I can eat are the nuts. So we have cashews and almonds and walnuts and all that stuff. And I'll grab a handful like 50 times a day. Like between every call, I run in there, I stand, I look around, and then I grab the handful of nuts. By the way, nuts are a good choice. But if I'm eating a handful every 2 hours, maybe not so good. And what am I covering up when I do that?
Yes. So that brings up a good point. That's why I love asking for examples is you might not be recognizing when you're full or satiated. So if you're eating the nuts, it depends how you eat them as well. And that's something to pay attention to. And that's another way to know if you're in a trigger. Are you just gobbling your food down and barely chewing it? Right? Are we eating? You know how many times I've done that where I've practically choked on my food. My husband's like, slow down, like you're going to choke, right? And that's all management. Right. So emotional eating, I call it like a management system, a control system of managing, again, a lot of times managing overwhelm. So you want to slow down and then see how that experience goes. So it would be great if you could actually eat the food, maybe sit down, give yourself maybe 5-minute breathing space, even 3-minute breathing space, perhaps away from your desk. So that could make a change, just not eating at the desk, because then we have triggers in front of us. We have visual cues, right? We have our calendars, we have our phones, and all of that is information coming at us, which is a trigger. And again, we know we're triggered because we feel rushed. Okay, let me just down this so I can get to this kind of thing. And so that might just be a situation where you might eat them. You might still have the same, but just a little tweaking of perhaps sitting outside for 3 minutes and slowly eating those nuts and getting more grounded and connected, and see if you notice a difference between your gut and your brain, because the gut, your digestive system gets thrown off by all of the stress response. And then it's difficult to read. Am I hungry? Is there something coming up? And I think sometimes we don't want to think that, especially those of us that have a beautiful life, like you have a beautiful life, I have a beautiful life. And sometimes we have this, what the heck do I need to, what am I carrying that I need to be upset about kind of thing, right? Look at the life I have. Look at the world I live in. And the reality is we all have emotions that come up every single day. It's just the way it is. And some of them are from today, and some of them are from the past, and some of them could be from generations that we carry on. And you see that, that because of patterns. You see similar patterns of reactivity. Maybe it's not the same pattern in that it's food. Maybe it's another impulse, right? So, I was just, my mother kept calling me today. I'm like, what the heck is, and that's a pattern of reactivity where, she'll call until it's just crowd. And I'm like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden I call her and the problem's solved. And I can't tell you how often that happens. Like, okay, so maybe if I just give it more space before I call you back, you're going to figure it out. It's like a panic, right? And that panic absolutely runs through our family. and maybe I don't call people constantly and say, hurry up, kind of call me back, but I might do it in a different way or with a different person. So it doesn't mean I'm, it's just a pattern. And so I always say, whoever notices the pattern is the one that's going to clear it. Right? It's not about who you have the pattern, you don't have the pattern. It's about becoming aware. And then that person who's aware clears the pattern. And the beautiful thing is you clear it for the whole family.
I love that so much. And you're right. The things that we do and clear, it's generational change. It like starts clearing through our children and our grandchildren and so on. One of the things that I love about you the most is you are so right. And you walk the walk. But you are always talking about what's the root cause. Food isn't the problem. We should love food. It nourishes our bodies. It gives us strength. It helps us heal. It's not the problem. You've got to get to the root cause. And the only way to do that is to be aware and start creating that change. I would love it if you told everybody about your new book that's coming out, your programs that you have so that they know how to find you.
Sure. So the new book is called Emotional Detox Now, and it's 135 cleanse practices. So when I use that term cleanse, I'm talking about a system that I created for learning how to process our emotions, because nobody really taught us how. They taught us what they were, but we don't know the how. And then I'm doing lots of live stuff now, which is pretty awesome. And it's on emotionaldetoxnow.com. This is coming out in January, and we're doing an emotional detox summit, Jana, on January 25th. It's amazing, huge, amazing summit that's coming out for people to listen to. I've got the book coming out. I'm also going to be doing an emotional eating course so we can clear all of this together. So whatever I'm bringing up today, don't worry about it, because there's going to be lots of opportunity to clear it.
And we're going to have all the links where you can find all of that amazing stuff. All you have to do is go to the show notes and grab them. But I don't want you to miss the other 3 parts. So the next part that you will be listening to is on consequences and stress response, which is super important. Like it's one of the key things to be aware of and to make those changes so that you can move forward in a healthier, happier lifestyle. So Sherianna, thank you so much for being here. I cannot wait till we record the next episode and everyone gets to hear this beautiful 4-part series.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.